why it's so hard.
I couldn't remember.
So I work at Three Chimneys. I've been there for about 6 years.
Do they have 3 chimneys on the thing?
We don't have 3 chimneys. We have a couple cupolas. No chimneys, though.
How do you get to that 3 chimneys?
It's really funny. Robert and Blythe Clay are the owners of Three Chimneys Farm.
I grew up in Australia. Moved to Japan when I was 21 years of age.
Japan?
Yeah. I was manager of a farm over there at Ben Hill, one of the best turf sires in the country. And came over here on a holiday and ended up falling in love and staying.
Wow, you still in love?
Yes, very much. But no, I've been training now for about 15 years. I'm one of my best years right now, and everything's going good. Bonnie Adams came to me about, I don't know how long ago it was, but she wanted to get licensed to see if she could save some horses on the backside. And I got Bonnie licensed, and I gave her first horse to find a home for, Cannibal Charlie. And I think he's doing good right now.
How hard was it to get Bonnie licensed?
Pretty easy.
Sure, green card, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
She's in some of the groups. But no, Bonnie's got a great heart, and she's done a great job for us.
Quick, I mean quick. We know you like to talk.
I'm Carl Cannon from Ireland originally, based out here in California. Spent 10 years in New York with Todd Fletcher and 7 with John Kimmel. My claim to fame obviously is Kinsale King winning the Dubai Gold Shaheen a couple of years ago. And successfully he's sound and happy and retired right now, and at boot camp getting to do some dressage this winter. And we got our first competition in December, and we're looking forward to it. And Bonnie does a great job here with Trott, and this is a really good cause, and we try as trainers to do the best that we can for these horses once they're retired and find them a good home and a good place. I've done a lot with them myself, and but Bonnie's really good. She's got a good strong team behind her, and we appreciate all the support you guys can give us.
How's Kinsale King right now?
King is good. He's in Norco right now. He goes to Burbank in December 14th and 15th for the Classic Thoroughbreds competition. I'll be there all dressed up myself, and I'll be on him, and we're going to try and support the Classic Thoroughbreds, which is for the off-track thoroughbreds. And I'm hoping a lot of man comes down and get in the same ring together and bring it on. I'm ready.
Up next, Jimmy the Hat. Jimmy's always got wonderful stories to tell us. Jimmy, give us one of your quick stories.
You want me to just introduce myself now or give you one of my stories?
Oh.
Story's going to take a few minutes.
Well, let's introduce yourself first.
All right, okay. My name is Jimmy Allard. You call me Jimmy the Hat. I can't figure out why. I've been obsessed with horses my entire life. I lived in Samsun, Turkey for 3.5 years and rode and drove 2 perfectly matched Arabians through the cobblestone streets of Samsun, Turkey. We used to unhook them and ride them out into the Black Sea, and I used to slide off their back and grab their tail as an 8-9-year-old kid and swim with them in the sea. We came back to America after 3.5 years, and I hadn't been in the classroom, and I basically had a nervous breakdown. And my mother said, I know what to do, and she bought me a horse. And I've owned horses. I worked at Finger Lakes Racetrack as a kid. And all I can tell you is that the only creature on the planet more beautiful than a horse is a woman. And I love both of them. I love women and horses an awful lot. And that's about it.
This is a dating show. We'll start off the dates with Jimmy later. Up next we have the Feet King Kai. Quick introduction.
Yes. Do you ask me something?
What brings you here tonight?
How much what?
He's right, he still doesn't speak
You got a
English.
funny
He's been here 40 years. He still can't speak English.
Ask me again.
What brings you here tonight?
Tonight, what
Yeah.
bring me in? Trott. Well, I think it's fun to be here tonight and do something for this event and to contribute to the retirement of horses.
We'll turn to Jack Vandenberg next. I'm sure he's got some good stories. And Jack, introduce yourself to people that I don't know how they would not know all about Jack from Grit to Glory.
Thank you. We kept most of the things out of there, Jimmy, and things we kept out of there, some of the stories, so kept it to the good. But I'm happy to be here. Bonnie has done such a grateful job. I've always tried to help anything I could do with the horses in my life, my whole racing career, and I love horses. I've always told everybody if I like whiskey like I like the horses, I'd be the biggest drunk in the world. So the feet, you might be taking something else up here tonight. I don't know. Anyway, it's just so great to be here. It's so great to see you people that support the retirement of horses, the job, and Bonnie, what their staff has done for it. Anything that we can do for these great individuals is not too much, I can tell you that. And it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
And last but not least, Bill Mott at the end of our panel, his first time here. You're brought here by Jack and the whole crew to come in here. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Bill.
Well, I started out at a very young age doing this. Of course, I'm very passionate about horses, and I am still passionate about horses. I started out, I guess, with the thoroughbreds on the racetrack when I was 14 years old, and after a few years, I guess by the time I was 19 or 20, I wound up working for Jack Vanberg. And of course, he told me when I went to work for him, I'd only have to work half days. And I thought that was pretty good. So I worked from 5 in the morning till 5 at night, and he said, you can have the rest of the day all to yourself. So, it was, quite an experience working for him. It was all about work ethic and how bad you really wanted it. But I think it all boils down to the horse, and I think that's what this group is all about. It's all about the horse. I think one thing we need to do, and instead of turning this responsibility over to somebody else, I think we need to really educate some of the current owners, the people that own the horses now. I think they have to have a little bit of a, more of a long-term insight into what's going to happen. When you make the investment, it's kind of like having a kid. I don't think you have them until they graduate from high school and all of a sudden you kick them out the door and you never see them again. I think it's, I think your responsibility goes a little bit beyond that, and I think I think it's important, and I think for a lot of these programs, I think it would be very good to gear it toward maybe the education and a mindset of the people that are, having the fun, having the glory, having the, so these people undertake some of the responsibility themselves instead of turning it over to somebody else and expecting somebody else to invest their money and their effort into doing it. But that being said, I'm always proud and happy to help any horse that needs a home, find a home, and it's not an easy job. I've had a couple recently in the past year that we've tried to find homes for, and it's a very difficult job, and you want to look after them and see that the right thing happens to them once they leave the racetrack. And I know as a trainer, I really appreciate all the help that everybody does to help with this endeavor. Thank you.
Very, very well said by Bill Martin. I'm sure he echoes the sentiments of every single person here. It's now not really to the trainer's responsibility, but the breeders, the owners, and it's easy to keep track on horses when you own them. I mean, there's Equibase. You can track your horse throughout its whole life. There really is no excuse. So we're all here for a good time tonight, so let's get on with some storytelling. And I'm going to keep it down there with you two guys. And Bill, we were talking earlier about your early career and working for Jack, and you said something about blowing out Gate Dancer the morning of the Preakness for Vanberg. Jack, do you remember that?
Billy blowed him out.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah, really. Yeah.
Well, what do you think? He didn't have his full half day in. He both did a little bit on that half day work, so I got him to blow that out. The morning he was in, and he had a horse in the Preakness. But I just want to tell you one thing. This young man right here was probably as good a horseman as I ever had worked for me and raised, and I call him one of my own, I can tell you that. We had little differences as we went along, and sometimes he told me I was goofy as a mess of mud, but we worked it out, and he's just the finest gentleman, and he takes such good care of his horses. He never rushes them. He takes all the time in the world with them. He lets his horses, like a good trainer's supposed to, tell him what they want to do. He don't push them in anything. I'm just very proud of him, I can tell you that. Some of the stories I can't tell. I was also his mentor in training, and he's got a beautiful wife and children that I helped him get on the right track with. He's a good man.
I wouldn't believe all that stuff he's telling me. The part about him being crazy, one day I thought he was absolutely out of his mind. We were at Omaha, Nebraska, and we had a horse called Gray Bar, and Jack bought him for $6,500. He'd been in South Louisiana, and he was ruled off of the racetrack down there because he had left the gate. He had bolted twice. He had propped leaving the gate. So Jack got him, and the horse had been a Ridgeling, and I believe Jack made him a gelding. And we started training him, and I showed up in Omaha and went to work for Jack. Now I'm getting on gray bar, and we're going through the normal routine of galloping. And this horse he was a little tricky. I mean, there was really no, you could gallop him real slow or he'd go real fast. He was not one of those horses you kind of find that nice in-between gallop. And so anyway, he had started the horse out, ran him for 6,500. It was like stealing candy from a baby that day. And I mean, I think that was the day they had the tornado in Omaha. I mean, completely, I mean, the sky was black. We ran this horse in about, you remember that? About half an hour later, this devastation that happened after, yeah. Anyway, so the horse won a couple races leading up to the Cornhusker.
65, 9, and 15,000 we ran for, and then he was third in the Lounge race and got moved up to second.
Yeah. But then we were getting him ready for the Cornhusker, or the Omaha Gold Cup for 3-year-olds. Master Derby was in there. So this is about 5-6 days before the race, and he tells me, so he tells me, he said, now you're gonna gallop him 2 miles, and the second mile you're gonna let him 2-minute lick. So I'm gonna gallop him 1 easy mile, let him 2-minute lick, and he used to have me do that. We had a mare called Targa we used to do that with, and anyway, so I go around 1 mile and I'm galloping him the second mile, and now I'm not going fast enough. I mean, this horse you could go slow, kind of easy, or there was no in between. Now he's out in the middle of the racetrack and he's cussing me out. I'm coming the second mile, and he said, "Ah, damn it, you're not going fast enough." He said, "Take him another mile." So I go around and I think this guy's absolutely out of his mind. So I go around again and I'm letting him gallop along. Now all of a sudden I see him up at the head of the stretch. This is on the 3rd mile, and he says, "Work him down to the quarter pole." He's on his tummy. And I says, he's getting nuttier as we go along. So I breeze the horse on down to the wire. And this horse he's got a reputation of propping anyway. I mean, he wants to, so he's got one ear forward and he's got one ear laid straight back on his head. I said, I don't know what's going to happen here. So finally, anyway, I made it down there, and I came back. And I don't think you're supposed to cuss your boss out. But I told him, I said, I think you've absolutely lost your mind. So anyway, needless to say, 5 days later, Gray Bar, who we'd run for 6,500 earlier in the meet, won the Omaha Gold Cup and beat Master Derby. So there was always some lessons to be learned, and sometimes the master is right every once in a while.
Billy was a champion wrestler in high school.
Well, not a champion. We did.
You're at the top of the class. I'm going to give him a little credit. You're at the top of the class, except I come down the shed one day at Sportswood Park. He's got some kid down on the ground beating down on the workhorse. And I looked in the back of his head bleeding. That kid had a rock and split his head open.
All right, Lafitte, we turn to you. We need a good story now from you, because you have to compete with these guys to your left. What's the best horse you ever rode, Lafitte? Yeah. There's only one Lafitte out there. I can only see one. I don't see Lafitte anywhere else. He's not Lafitte. He likes me.
Well, the best horse I rode was a firm. And the best filly I rode was Bayacoma.
Tell me about a firm. Why was he so good?
He was just a great horse, and he was very smart, and he liked the challenge. Every time horse came close, he would respond.
What does Jack got to say about that?
But
he's not listening. He's a firm is the best horse he ever rode.
When he was riding for me, he said gate dance was the best horse. Now when you get a little older, your memory gets a little off when you take a drink. I don't know about him.
Well, he could have been probably the best one, but he was a little goofy. That horse.
Like his trainer.
He was very predictable sometimes, you know? But I won some nice races with him, and especially that race in Louisiana.
But you make whipped you over the head, whipped you over the chest, and you still beat him.
Yeah, that's right. And the funny thing about it, the sneaky son of a gun, I didn't even notice that. You know? It was so sneaky until I came back and I saw the picture. You son of a bitch, I told him.
I want to tell you this.
And then they gave me 5 days. I said, sure, they should have given you 20 days.
I'll tell you this. The first $1 million Santa Anita handicap they had, Lafitte beat me with Grin Tom on He-Rat. I was in front every step of the way but the last darn jump. The first $1 million race, he was 170 to 1, He-Rat was.
You remember that, Lafitte?
I ain't forgot you for it either, in case you don't know.
I drove a Drayton, wasn't it?
You were on Drayton.
Yeah, and believe me, at the heavy stretch, I didn't think I was going to cut him. I said, God damn it, who that son of a gun came right? I knew it was right. I said, I'm waiting for him to stop, you know? So all of a sudden, I know I'm going to get him anytime, and all of a sudden, he's like, shit, man. Good try. It's really tough out there, so I went after my horse, and nothing, man, nothing. And finally, 60 horses, man, I might get him. Boom, I got him.
Tell me about Bayakoa. What made her great?
What?
Tell me about Bayakoa.
Bayakoa?
I'm not saying it right, I'm sorry. Bayakoa.
Bayakoa was, that filly going to the gate was unbelievable. It was just crazy going to the gate. She would never relax. She was always jumping up and down. And the best race she ever run was in Oklahoma, in Arkansas. And that day when we came out of the infield, where they had the party on the infield, the band was playing, and she went with her. You know, she was going crazy with the band. So I kept, stop the band.
They understand you? No.
So I told the pony boy, I said, you know, let's get out here, let's take him in the backside. And still, she went crazy. You know, I said, this filly is no wrong jump today. And boy, she coming down the stretch, I'm telling you, I don't care if Secretary would have been in that race, she never would have caught this filly that day. I never hit her, I just hand-rode it. I mean, she got to the wire just full of run. It was an unbelievable race, you know, and definitely she's the best I ever rode.
Jimmy's always got a good, colourful story for us. Do you have any of Lafitte that you care to share with us?
Not that I can share with you.
Oh, okay. That's right. You can tell me later.
Jimmy.
But yes, sir.
Tell them that story about the night you hit Pick 6, went to Dantown's. That's a beautiful story. And he eats there every Sunday night.
Well, I'm gonna tell them a story about Dantown's, but I want you all to know that Jack Van Berg was the youngest man ever to be inducted into the Thoroughbred Horse Racing Hall of Fame. He was listed in the Guinness Book of World Records as winning more races than any trainer in history, and he saddled Ali Shiva to be the all-time money-winningest racehorse in history all at the same time. And Mr. Mott over here, who I don't know very well, Bobby Frankel was one of his biggest fans. He loved the way that Bill Mott trained horses. It's an honor to be sitting up here with him. Adam Kitchingman over here. They've got an incredible horse race over in Europe where they run down a hill, and it's a very famous horse race in Europe. He was the Australia, I'm sorry. He was the youngest man in history to ever win that as a rider. Okay, so these are the kind of horsemen, the kind of people you're talking to. And obviously, I don't have to talk about this guy. I mean, I was there the day at Hollywood Park when he broke the all-time record. It was history. McCarran and I ran down the winner's circle, and it's just it's an honor to be sitting up here. I'm going to tell you two stories. One of them is just plain fun. This is a story. It's a very famous restaurant in West Hollywood called Dantana's. And Dantana's has been known for many, many years as a racetrack place. Mel Studi loves the place, Bobby Frankel, Baffert's favorite restaurant, Jack Van Berg's, and gamblers for years and years and years. So right at West Hollywood, I like to tell people that when the movie stars are fashionable, they want to go elsewhere. When they're hungry, they eat at Dantana's. The place is packed 7 nights a week. So many, many years ago, Dantana opens this restaurant, and he hires a guy by the name of Boguslawski, who was a pizza man for Carmen Maselli and a pizzeria up on Hollywood Boulevard. And one night, Bogey's working, and this little guy walks in the front door, and Boguslawski says to Dan Tan, he says, Bogey, says, Dan Tan, he says, can I buy that guy a bottle of wine? And Dan Tan says, well, who the hell is he? And he says, well, his name is Wayne Rogers?
Harris.
Wayne Harris. And he's a jockey, and he gives me tips on horses, and he says, you know, I make some good money with this guy. Dan says, yeah, he says, go ahead, buy him a bottle of wine. So Dan completely forgets about it. He doesn't think anything about it. The night goes on, whatever. Dan shows up the next day, and he goes into his office, and there's a great big huge pile of papers on his desk, and there's checks, and there's all kind of things, and there's a napkin sitting there. And on the napkin it says Wayne Harris, number 1, number 3, and there's some scribbling underneath that he can't quite make out. So back in those days, the Bible in Southern California was the Herald Examiner, and the Herald Examiner covered horse racing the way that we should have horse racing covered. I mean, it was pictures, articles, editorials, I mean, all the charts, everything was in there. It was fantastic. So he grabs the Herald Examiner, and he looks, and sure enough, Wayne Harris, the first race, he's on the horse number 3, and he says, oh my God. He grabs $400 out of the till, he jumps in his car, and he rushes out to Hollywood Park. Now back in those days, believe it or not, Hollywood Park had 50,000, 60,000 people. He literally had to park his car across the street and pay a woman $10 to park on the lawn. He runs across through the parking lot, he gets up to the mutual window, he says, give me $400 to win a number 3, I mean. And the lady, mutual clerk looks at him, he says, sure, you sure want to bet that horse? That horse is 47 to 1. He says, just give me the tickets. The tickets come out, the horse wins, he collects just right around $20,000. So now he is absolutely ecstatic until he starts thinking about it. He says, this stupid bogey, this idiot, why didn't he make sure I got this information? If I hadn't seen that napkin, I would have never made the bet. Why didn't he make sure that he gave me this information? So now as the day's going on, and Boguslawski was the type of guy that lived in a little apartment, he didn't have a telephone, there was no way to get a hold of him, but he was going to show up for work at about 5 o'clock that night. So that night, Dan Tana is just going back and forth in front of the barn. He's getting madder as he can think. This idiot. If he'd have told me about this information, I'd have bet 500, I'd have bet 800, I'd have bet 1,000. And he's getting greedier and greedier all the time as it goes on. And in walks Boguslawski, and by the time he gets 2 steps in the door, he says, you stupid Czechoslovakian, he calls him every name in the book. And Bogey says, Dan, what are you talking about? He says, why didn't you make sure I got the information about that Wayne Harris horse? He says, Dan, I don't know what you're talking about. He says, right there, Wayne Harris, race number 1, the number 3 horse, boom. Wayne looks at it, he says, Dan, that's Wayne Harris, table 1, party of 3, a bottle of Pinot Grigio wine. Now I give you one of my favorite Charlie Whittingham stories of all time. Charlie Whittingham trained for a very famous woman named Mary Bradley. And for whatever reason, Mary Bradley called him up one day and said, I do not want Bill Shoemaker on my horse, Cougar 2. And he said, are you crazy? Bill Shoemaker rides all my best horses, rah, rah, rah. So she says, I don't care. I do not want, she says, I want Lafitte Pinkai on my horse. Interesting enough. So he calls up Shoemaker and he says, listen, he says, I don't know what Mary Bradley's got against you or whether you had some kind of beef with her, but she wants you off her horse. He said, but I got this other horse owned by this crazy cowboy from Canada named Kennedy Road. And he said, you can ride that horse. So it comes the day of the race, and Lafitte's on Cougar 2 and Shoemaker's on Kennedy Road. And this cowboy from Canada is just getting drunker than hell, and Mary Bradley is the most, the most proper prim woman you ever seen in your life. And now they're all sitting in a box together. The drunken cowboy's sitting here, and Mary Bradley's sitting here, and these 2 horses hook up at the head of the stretch. And I mean, this is a battle all the way to the wire. I'm talking head and head, neck and neck, nose and nose to the wire. Boom, they hit the wire. They both turned to Charlie Whittingham and they said, Charlie, who won? Charlie said, I did.
Great story.
Jack wants me to tell you the story. I'll tell it as quickly as I can, but this restaurant, this is a real long story. If I told you the whole story, I won't tell it to you. It's a great story. It's the greatest one of my life, but it's too long. But this restaurant we're talking about, Dantana, he's a famous guy in Hollywood. All the movie stars eat there all the time. And he's a famous degenerate gambler. So he's going through a divorce, and he made a movie. He got sued for $500,000. He borrowed $500,000 from really bad people. He was paying an incredible interest rate on it every month. He was getting ready to lose the restaurant. And on January 16, 1989, he walked into Santa Anita Racetrack, and I said, Dan, how much money you got on you? He said, I got $1,300 on me. I said, I need $1,100 of it. He said, why? I said, because I got a $3,840 pick 9 ticket, and I want to play this pick 9 ticket. He said, pick 9 ticket? He said, you've lost your damn mind. You can't hit a pick 6, you hit a pick 3, now you're going to hit a pick 9? I said, it's a mandatory payout. I said, I want to take a shot at it. And he walked away from me, and about 10 minutes later, he walked up to me and handed me $1,100, and I was shocked. I put the ticket in, we hit it, we won $1,065,000, and we saved his restaurant.
True, honest to God story. I've heard the long version.
Honey, it's all, believe me, the IRS has it very well documented.
I'm sure you read me all the time.
You're pretty right.
All right, Carl, next up it's you. When I first met Carl, I have to say, it was years ago in Saratoga with a guitar, singing in the passing glass. All of a sudden, he arrives in California with a string of horses and tells me he's a trainer. And I'm like, what? I thought you were playing guitar somewhere.
It's been a long road. Two quick stories.
Give us a couple stories.
Quick stories. My first Bill Mott story would be, obviously coming from New York, was when he shut down New York City, when he retired Cigar. Probably the biggest moment in my life as a young kid. And I remember going to Madison Square Garden, and Bailey came out there with the stills of Alan Paulson, and Bill Cosby brought a trailer load of carrots, and remember those big 12-foot shoes. And I was a fan at the time of Cigar, and watched him every morning training, and he'd jog back as he'd shuffle back there to the wire, and he'd stand in there and look at everybody, and he was just I just thought it was so much fun to watch him train. And you know, I was young, I was 17, 18, 19, something around there. And as a fan of the horses, you know, dreaming about being a trainer at the time, to watch Bill Mott go through all that and the pressure of being a trainer, and I didn't realize what he was going through until I actually got a good horse of my own. But back then, Cigar was probably my idol, and I was hoping one day I would find one of my own. And very fortunate enough to get one with Kinsale King. And
so you trained your sprinter like Cigar?
No, that's where Jack Van Berg comes in. But my hat does go off to Bill Mott, and it's a real pleasure to have known him all these years, and just to be up here with him. And he runs a really awesome outfit, and a very classy outfit, and as does Pletcher that I was with. And New York do things a lot different than we do out here, but and I try to bring my New York to California, per se, with my style of training.
Your accent too.
Yeah. But in training Kinsale King, I'll never forget, with Jack Van Berg, and I got Kinsale King in June of '09, and I was backing him up to the mile pole at Del Mar, and he refused to turn around and gallop. I said, that's kind of strange. So I just kept jogging, and I'd work him every 7 days with the pony, and he worked really fast, and I said, wow, this is pretty neat. Then I decided to give him a day off every other day of the week, but I would just keep jogging 2 or 3 miles. But anyway, I get to Hollywood Park, and we're getting to run him, and we're hiding him, and we're putting shoe polish on his face, and we're hiding his works, and this, that, and the other thing, and you know,
it's
this is true.
It's okay. I don't think there's any stewards in the house here.
Jack kept saying, what are you doing just jogging that horse? I said, Jack, trust me, he'll win when we run it. He'll be 100 to 1. No, I'm telling you. I said, Jack, so I keep jogging by Jack, and I come out the next day in the pony, where's the king at? And he's walking today. Walking? Yep, he's walking. And I jog in the next day, jog a mile, and he'd look at Jerry, and Jerry would look back at Jack, and this guy's crazy. Long story short, we get to run him, and Alonzo Quinones was on him, and he got sick that morning. And there were only 2 jockeys left in the jock crew, Martin Garcia, who I'd never heard of before, who had come down from Golden Gate, and Kayla Straw, who had shipped in from Australia, who I didn't know at all. So I said, send out Garcia. So he comes out, the horse is 70 to 1. I called every jockey. I called Barahona, Rosario, Talamo. Nobody would ride this horse. So Garcia comes out, could barely speak a word of English. I told my groom to tell him, just pull your irons up and just hit him on the shoulder and he'll take care of the rest. And I remember Jack and Jerry and a couple of other people, and the clockers were on him. He was 60 to 1, he paid $125, and everybody was on him. I don't think Jack ever second-guessed me by jogging after that. We jogged him into the Underwoods 8 weeks later, right or wrong, we jogged him into the Underwood, he won that, and we jogged him into the Palos Verdes. He never galloped, ever galloped him. And he jogged into Dubai and walked 10 days before Dubai, walked 11 days before the Palos Verdes, and 8 days in before the Underwood. And Jack witnessed it. It was all there in front of him, and he's just an incredible horse. And I'm just so happy to have him. And thanks so much to all the people that followed him on Facebook and Twitter and all the great responses we've had. But Jack saw it, and I thought it was kind of funny because listening to Bill Motley's with Jack's training, Jack really hasn't changed that much. They still go 2 miles and breeze a mile and a half.
Jack's got nothing to that. What do you think about his jogging technique?
It worked for one horse.
What do you think about the jogging technique?
I just told him they weren't having trot races, that's all I told him. They come here to run, we ain't having a trot race.
$2 million later, he didn't say nothing.
Yeah. World Cup with Kinsale King, the sprint race?
You know, for me it was a dream. I've been to Dubai before with Fletcher, so I had witnessed what it was to go over there as a groom or a gallop boy. And to take my people where we came from with Dr. Sheehy and his family, they'd never witnessed any of this. I dreamt about it, and I believed in my horse, and I knew that he was running more so for the people or for us than he was because of the horse race. He really has his character was really personal, and I had no fear when I got over to Dubai. It was the first time we were around 2 turns, and it was first time synthetic. So I already had him at Golden Gate for a month prior. I already prepped him up there, and I knew that would. If I had read the racing form before the morning of Dubai, I'd been
Can you read?
Scared. No. But they had like the Rock and Man who had 10 Group 1 wins in a row, and I didn't understand all that. I just knew I was going there with confidence with the horse, and he was sound and happy and healthy. And I did the opposite of every trainer in Dubai. We got there on Wednesday, we quarantined on Thursday, I took him to the track on Friday, he stood in the gate, and I walked Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. I walked him. And I would walk out of the barn at 5:30, and Julio Canami and Panza and all these trainers are coming in. Where are you going? I said, I'm going home. You didn't train? No, I'm walking. Because the walk to the racetrack was 1.5 miles and this much deep sand and 115 degrees, and we just got off the plane in 28-hour travel. I ain't doing it. And my horse was happy and fresh. So I rolled the dice. The owners got there on Wednesday. They want to see the horse train. I said, well, you better come back to the barn and watch him walk. And I remember going to the front side, and the media were there, and we all know Fanny from French News. She said, we'd love to see Kinsale King. Can we see the jog? And I said, well, you better call Hollywood Park. You ain't get no pictures of him yet. So I gave him 2 pints of Guinness in the morning and 2 in the evening. We hauled ass over there, and it was a dream come true, obviously. And I never forget it's Pleasure on the phone. He's like, God damn it, I've been over there umpteen times. You can't win the damn race. You do it 1 year. I said, well, what you gotta do is just jog those suckers. Good training. But it was a dream come true, and I'm so thankful he's okay, and I'm so thankful he's just retired sound, and just looking forward to our adventures ahead. And he's given me everything. He's given me a house, he's given me cars, he's given me plane tickets everywhere. He's done everything for me. Women, yeah, I'm freelancing. My book is open. I'm just looking for
Yeah, he's open. Anyone interested? He's taking applications right now. All right, Adam, I learned something about you that I didn't know before, and looking at you standing up, I would never have guessed that you were a jockey. How do you go from being a jockey in Australia to coming over here?
The money was terrible. No, it wasn't an actual jockey race. It was more of an amateur race.
Jumps?
Jumps, yeah. If anyone's watched the Man from Snow River, it's a very, very famous Australian movie.
Were you in it?
No.
Are you the Man from Snow River?
My very first employee who put me down. So you go, up a hill and down a hill, and down a hill.
Straight down.
Yeah, straight down. Through a river, then you think you're done, and then you got 2 6-foot jumps you have to go over. And a lot of horses get to that, and you're going up to at a walk, and they're so tired. So you get to those, and you just kind of hit and hope, and you make it over. So first year I competed in it, I broke my arm, got concussion, got dragged, and there's a picture of me on the front page of the Herald Times, which is like the New York Times, I guess. Adam Fine's racer drag. There's a horse standing on my head, I'm getting dragged out of the race. Yeah, so then come back the next year and I won it. So it was at 19 years of age, it was a pretty big thing.
How did you get your start in America?
I came over here, I was in Japan, and went to the races Friday night, and it was Hollywood Park, and I meet up with my main man Jimmy the Hatter a couple of days later. We go to the races, meet up with a fellow called Brian Lynch, and Brian goes, "Oh, come back in the barn in the morning." So we go back to the barn and meet up with Brian, and so I'm having a barbecue at my house this afternoon, come back to my house. So we go back there, I meet Jimmy the Hat, and we start talking a little bit, and he said, "Why don't you make it a working holiday?" So we came over here and started working, and I was riding for Brian, and actually the first person I worked for was Charlie Whittenham. And just started galloping horses. I met a lady, I fell in love, and my friends went back to Australia and I stayed. So I always wanted to train. So about 2 years later, I set up a small barn, and just one thing after another, just built it up to where I am now.
What's the hardest thing about being a trainer? For people that don't know, I mean, you get up at stupid o'clock, or do you? I mean, you're there fairly early. Fairly. And you're not going to beat Wayne or Jack to the barn, or Bill.
You think?
And I watch you come in sometimes.
I guarantee I'm the last person to leave, though. The hardest part, just the heartache. It's so up and down, and just trying to keep steady. And I've got great support with my wife and everybody. So you just have to keep struggling away, and just keep pushing away, and everything comes around. So I've been very, very fortunate. Things have just been. It's been a great year for me this year, and picked up some really big clients, and things are going good.
Baby on the way?
Yes, baby on the way.
Congratulations. Alright, Ben, you've got some big shoes to fill here. We need some stories from Three Chimneys.
I know.
And so tell me something about Dynaformer. I hear he was a bit of a savage.
Dynaformer owns the Twitter handle Hannibal Lecter of horses. He bit fingers off. Like, that dude was fierce. So I started at Three Chimneys in 2008, and I grew up like horse crazy beyond belief. I rode hunter jumpers, and I told my parents, "I'm gonna go to Kentucky be a jockey," and they were like, "So cute, you're 5'8", you're going to college." So I negotiated, I paid for college by riding at the track. So rode in the mornings, went to college in the afternoon, earned my way somehow flapping my gums and riding horses in the industry. And got to Three Chimneys, and the first order of business was advertising Dynaformer. How many people know who Dynaformer is?
Yes.
How many people know who Barbaro is? Or Americane, or Carno, or Bunting. He's had so many champions and grade 1 winners and millionaires. He's this ridiculously good sire who is as ugly as they come. He is the epitome of beauty does not win a race, fastness wins a race. So I advertised him. I was at Three Chimneys doing marketing. All the media always wanted to see him. They'd always want to pet him. You don't do that, you lose appendages. And so when he got to be 26, 27, it's time to retire a stallion. It's usually time to retire a stallion before that, but he was ridiculous, and he was a heck of a dude, and he had the fertility of God. So he was a stallion until 25, 26, 27. We tried to retire him at 27. He threw such fits about not having his lady friends that we decided we'll breed 20 mares a year, and awesome.
dog's not saying anything to this conversation.
We're talking about horse sex, nothing else. But so, breed 20 mares a year and then trying to like wean him off of that and give him good retirement. So, there was a morning where he bred his mare for the morning, had a date, went back to his stall, and he had an abscess tooth or something, so the groom goes to give Dynaformer his SMZs, and he throws a freaking fit about it, literally gives himself a heart attack, and keels over on the ground, gone. Almost fell on her, gone. And she screams for the vet, it was terrifying, screams for the vet, $150,000 stallion, most expensive stallion in North America, and he's laying dead in front of her, hanging by his tie, his throat latch. And so they call the vet, they're trying to get him there, they cut the throat latch, he's laying there, and the vet comes and he's like, the dude's dead. And he's 27, he's lived a great life, that's fine. They're working on what the plan is, and all of a sudden, he raises his head up. And within 10 minutes, he's on his feet. And within 20 minutes, he's like, do I have another date today? What's going on? And so we get specialists in there, because what the heck happened to him? Like, it obviously wasn't a heart attack. He's standing right here. Like, was it a seizure or a stroke, whatever? And so they do an EKG and everything, and they see he's had a massive heart attack. He's got an 8-centimeter hole on one side of his heart, 2 3-millimeter holes on the other side of his heart. It has exploded, and the vet has said she's never even seen this in a necropsy, let alone a horse standing in front of her. So she said, we can put him down now, or keep him comfortable, and he'll probably pass the night. And we said, well, he's on his feet, we'll just keep him comfortable. So the next morning, it's breakfast time, and he is pissed that he has not had breakfast, because he's alive. And so they're like, well, key factor. And so they said, oh, we'll feed him and then turn the other horses out. They turn the other horses out, just keeping him calm, because if you've had such a heart trauma, you don't want to have another one. And so they turn the horses out, and he is freaking out that he's not outside. So they say, oh, just turn him outside. He might pass when he's outside. That might be the best thing for him, whatever. By the end of the day, all the horses want to come in. It's dinner time, and he is like, I come in first. Bring me inside and feed me dinner. So they bring him in, and the next day, the same thing happens. They kept saying, oh, he might survive 48 hours, 72 hours, maybe a week. He ended up surviving a month, happy as a lark. The only thing was that he turned from the Hannibal Lecter of horses to the cuddliest horse ever. Like, he craved human attention. He was the cutest horse ever. Everyone got their photos with him, got to love on him and pet him, and he always had people around his pasture because he made our careers, you know? So he ended up living for a little over another month and then passed away the week of the Kentucky Derby. And I told Robert Clay, the owner of the farm, we should do some kind of service, you know, commemorating the life that this horse has had. And he was like, you're seriously going to do a pet funeral at the farm? But Case Clay, his son, and a lot of us, like, the horse meant a lot to us. We should do this. We had hundreds of people come out to see the service for that horse, and the media covered it. It was huge, and so it was kind of neat to see how much the horse meant to so many people, because he was so special to us for different reasons, like biting off fingers and having such a personality.
The Hannibal Lecter.
The Hannibal Lecter of horses.
That's what we'll always remember for. He certainly was a great one, and thanks so much for that, Jen. I was wondering where that was going. Cup week, and we can't have you up here without, of course, asking you, and I'll probably shove a microphone in your face tomorrow if I can catch you, which might be doubtful. How are your horses doing coming in? How is Royal Delta? Is she going to win a third distaff?
Well, that's quite a challenge. I think there's only been one other horse that's done one
Golden Cobra
3 in a row, and that's Golden Cobra. So, you know, it's a big challenge to try to, you know, fill those shoes or match that record. And I think she's a good filly, and she's capable of doing it if she shows up and, you know, runs her very best race. It's going to take her very best race to win the race, because there's some nice horses in there, and I think we're seeing that the 3-year-old fillies are showing up and they're making quite a presence. So it'll be an interesting race. I think the race was touted last year as one of the best races, the distaff I'm talking about, and I think this year, I think it's, you know, one of the most interesting races, again, although it's only a 6-horse field.
And how's Ron the Greek doing? I mean, he definitely wins the card for the most handsome horse on the racetrack, because you can see him coming a mile away.
He's great. He's, you know, like the barn pet, and one of those horses that, you know, he shows up every time, sometimes bigger than others, but he's, you know, he's always makes his presence felt in a race. It seems like he's been at least 4th in his last 20 races. He's been 1, 2, 3, 4. You know, he's run in the best races they've had, and he's won a few of them, and he's coming off a spectacular race. I mean, his race in the Jockey Gold Cup was just kind of a jaw dropper, and I don't know if he can ever repeat that race again. If he does, you'll see him make. If he repeats that race, he'll make his presence felt on Saturday.
Well, he certainly will. And how about Flat Out?
He's doing well. Looks great. He's doing good, and just 2 real nice old campaigners. Ron is 6, Flat Out 7, and they still, you know, they act like they're 4-year-olds.
Will this likely be the last year we see them run?
I don't know. I guess that'll be determined after the races. You know, that we'll have to work on that after the Breeders' Cup's over.
Jack, you look like you got something to say down there.
No, I mean, they can say that's just a tribute to Billy, his horsemanship. And has them horses at that age, and they're still sound. He's kept them sound and kept them going. That's the kind of horseman that Billy is, I can tell you that. And they don't go to the racetrack or do anything with them if they're not completely 100% for him, I can tell you. And I wanted to tell you one thing. You were talking about people getting up early and who gets up early. And one day that we were at the airport park, we used to be at the Cockatoo, and Charlie Winningham and Lasborough and
What's the Cockatoo?
Oh my God.
the motel, Cockatoo, that's where they all stayed and drank at night. Well, it's tore down now, so you can't see it. But anyway, Proctor, Winningham, and Lasborough and I, we all stayed at the Cockatoo, and then we moved to the Airport Park Hotel.
I know what that is.
And where it was. It ain't there no more. Anyway, we're down there drinking one night, and I had this owner from Detroit, John McKinnon, and there was a trainer called Tennessee Wright. He was a hell of a horseman. He'd take a distance horse and run him, keep him 30 days and run him short and have him on the lead every way. And he only give the jocks instructions. Go to the front and make him cover the ground. They're already covered. He always had a cigarette hanging out of his mouth. So John McKinnon drank with him at Detroit at the old Hazel Park, DRC all the time. And so he came out here. I had Tennessee Wright a steak. So we're down at the bar. Well, I had sense enough to go to bed. John McKinnon tried to drink with them 3 guys. Trust me, you couldn't keep up with them. They were the toughest son of guns you ever seen. And Proctor and Willingham, if you had to beat them to the barn in the morning, you had to stay up all night. That's the only way you could beat them in the barn, no matter how much they drank. So my poor owner, they got him so drunk he couldn't find his way off the elevator that night. The next day, I think something's happened to him. Finally, when the horse was going out of the track at Hollywood Park, he shows up, comes staggering in. And so now, later on that morning, they get in an argument. And Charlie and Proctor and Laz, and they said, by God, we get there at 4 o'clock in the morning. Laz says, they said, Laz, what time do you get there? He said, I'm a horse trainer. I'm not the night watchman. He said, I come later. I'll never forget that's what he told me.
Well, while we've got you guys captive here, does anyone have any questions you would like to ask? Maybe Lafitte, or Jack, or Billy, or anybody?
Jen, tell us a little bit about Big Brown. So I think everybody thinks he's like this big tough old stuff, but tell us how sweet and funny.
I love Big Brown. Big Brown and I both started at Three Chimneys in 2008. He's a little bit more athletic than I am. He's definitely a stud. He loves the ladies. But he's the sweetest horse outside of his breeding career that you'll ever meet. I actually bring granola bars to work in my lunch every day, and he loves the Nutri-Grain granola bars, and I give him half of my Nutri-Grain granola bar more days than not. He is like a lot of thoroughbreds and a lot of stallions are very routine oriented, and he's very much not. Like, he's just the epitome of a dude. He takes it as it comes. Anything you throw at him, he'll deal with. The day that he was presented to the public, we had a huge party at Three Chimneys, and we had a band, and we had hundreds of fans come there. We had a lot of breeders come, we had a lot of media come, and so there was like blaring trumpets and crashing cymbals and flashes everywhere, and he just took it all in, like, this is here for me, and I'm presenting myself. And so he's awesome in that respect. He can get a good racehorse. His horses love every surface. They look like him. They have the body that he does, but they also have the mind that he does, which I love because he's very sound of body and mind. And then I do all the rehoming of all of our thoroughbreds after they're done with their racing careers, and not every thoroughbred is going to be a champion. Not every thoroughbred needs to be producing the next generation. And I've rehomed 2 big browns now, and one of them is getting ready to start her career on the A circuit as a hunter, and the other one is hopefully going to be an eventer this year. So, like, athleticism transcends disciplines with these horses, and yes, it's true, there's another stallion that's like that. His half-brother is an A circuit show jumper. He's a fantastic racehorse. So, with Big Brown, he just stamps athleticism. He stamps a sound mind, which I love. So it's an awesome horse.
I have a question for the feet. Who was one of the most superstitious jockeys you ever rode with? Or what were one of your superstitions before you went out? Did you wear your pants inside out?
Yeah, I used to wear my underwear inside out.
Every time?
Every time. A reporter will come to the judge room and he says, "Is that true?" And I say, "Well, yeah." He says, "Show me," and I show him.
What about now?
No anymore. Only when I go on a date.
Show us.
Anyone else got any other questions?
I want the feet to tell the story about his beeper. When he took
Your alarm clock, you had
your beeper.
Your alarm
Which
clock.
your
Your alarm clock you had on the jockey.
I used to take a nap before the races. I used to take, I would meditate before the races, and I would meditate for 20 minutes.
I've seen Jack meditate in the morning sometimes.
He's doing it right now at the table.
I would meditate for 20 minutes, and I have one of those alarm clocks that, you know, you can put them in any place.
They beep, yeah.
Yeah, but I used to put them in my boot. So in 20 minutes I start beeping, and I'll get up and I shut it off. But this day, they called me, and I, shut it off, but I went to ride, and I forgot about it. So now, we're going to the post parade, and Mike Smith said to me, "Hey, you got your alarm clock in your boot." And I'm like, "Oh shit." I didn't know what I put it inside my underwear, my pants. So we go in the gate, right? And we're ready to break, and they started, "Break, That was very funny.
Did you win?
I don't remember.
Anyone else? You
have Jimmy talk a little bit about Bobby Franco.
Let's have some Bobby Franco stories, Jimmy. A good one, you can tell.
Well, everybody knows that, for me, Bobby was just an incredible trainer. I think there's a big difference between horsemanship and training. And I think Bobby was a whole lot greater trainer than he was a horseman. And a lot of people don't understand that, but Bobby really psychologically knew how to get into their heads and pick out their little idiosyncrasies. But Bobby wasn't a real social guy, and David Landsman summed it up best when he was being interviewed about Squirtle Squirt in the Bossberg, and one of the media was interviewing David Landsman. He said, "You know, Mr. Landsman, since Bobby Frankel's taken over the training of this horse, he's won a couple of Grade 1 races, and you're going into this great big race. And can you tell us the strategy that you and Mr. Frankel have discussed regarding the race?" And David Landsman very calmly said, "Sir, you assume that Mr. Frankel speaks to me." and that was Bobby Frankel. He was a very strange guy, but I've never met anybody in my life that loved their dogs or their horses more than Bobby Frankel. When his dogs died, he literally had nervous breakdowns and was out of his mind. And when one of his horses very rarely ever broke down, he would lose his mind. But we were at Del Mar one day, and everybody knows that Janine Sahadi and Julio Canani at one time went together. And we were all talking, and Bobby wasn't the type of guy that would talk about anybody's personal life. He'd say, so there was 4 or 5 of us talking, and Harry the Hat was there, interestingly enough. And Harry the Hat was standing on the sidelines, and somebody walked up to Bobby and said, "Well, what do you think of Janine Sahadi and Julio?" And Bobby said, "I don't know nothing about Janine Sahadi and Julio, but Janine can train, that's all I know." And Harry the Hat said, "Well, you know how she learned how to train, don't you, Bobby?" And Bobby said, "No, how?" She said, "Well, Julio was obviously talking in his sleep." And I don't know why, but that struck Bobby Frankel. I never saw him laugh like that. 20 minutes later, Frankel was still laughing. These guys will tell you, Frankel didn't laugh a whole lot. But he laughed for 20 solid minutes. And I'll tell you what kind of a guy he was, though. When he was being interviewed, when he had Empire Maker and Peace Rules in the Kentucky Derby in 03. We were in the commissary, and there's, I don't know, probably 100 people from the media all over the world. And one of the guys asked me, he said, "Mr. Frankel, since you've been inducted into the Hall of Fame," he said, "does it put more pressure on you to win the Kentucky Derby?" And he said, "If Buster Milrick's not in the Hall of Fame, I'm embarrassed for the Hall of Fame." And I was like, whoa. And on the way back to the barn, I said, "You better start telling me a whole lot about Buster Milrick." And 1 year after Bobby died, Buster Milrick was posthumously inducted into the Hall of Fame. And Bobby said that Buster Milrick was as good a horseman as he ever saw in his life. And he said that he was just a freak, that he invented equipment and stuff that other guys didn't know. And he had a lot of respect for him. He had an incredible amount of respect for Jack Van Berg's horsemanship. And he also had an incredible amount of respect for Bill Mott. He thought that Bill Mott was a class act. And Bobby wasn't the kind of guy that gave out too many bouquets. If you didn't like it, you knew about it real quick. And I don't know why, but I was given the greatest gift of my life by Bobby Frankel. One morning I was walking through Del Mar Racetrack, and there were some jocks agents, some guys hanging around Bobby's barn, and they weren't talking about horses, they were talking about boxing. And at the time I was managing the heavyweight kickboxing champion of the world, Dennis Alexio, 72-1 with 69 knockouts, greatest heavyweight kickboxer of all time. And I think it was Buck Pegram, Jim Pegram, who called me over, and he said, "Well, Jimmy knows about boxing." And we started having this conversation. It was the first time I'd ever really talked to Bobby Frankel, other than to say hello. But Bobby's the kind of guy I stayed away from because he had a reputation for being real nasty with people. And if somebody's nasty with me, I'm going to get nasty with them back. So anyway, we had this real nice conversation, and then everybody kind of walked away, and I didn't think anything of it. And I started seeing the signs, no visitors, no visitantes, no trespassing. I thought, I better get the hell out of here. So I wandered away, and next afternoon I was at the track, and Bobby Frankel walked up to me and he said, "What's the matter? Can't you get up in the morning?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, why didn't you come out to the barn this morning?" I said, "I was out to the barn this morning." I said, "I was at John Sheriff's barn. I was at Bruce Headley's barn." I said, "I was at a lot of barns." He said, "Why didn't you come by my barn?" I said, "Because the last thing I want to do is come by your barn and have you scream and holler at me." He said, "That'll never happen. You can come to my barn anytime you want, and my horses when I want you to go to the winner's circle." Well, I haven't been lost for words too many times in my life, but I stood there and said, "Are you kidding me?" And he said, "Get the fuck out of here, I told you never." And that was it. And for the last 15 years of his life, for whatever reason, I was blessed to be around those horses and travel to the Kentucky Derby and the Breeders' Cups with him, and go to Rio de Janeiro. And I lived in Santa Monica. He lived in Pacific Palisades, and he was a huge fight fan. And other than horse racing, which I follow every day of my life, boxing was the only sport that I ever followed. So that was kind of our kindred thing that we had going on. And he knew that everybody knows me as a horse race gambler, but the people who really know me know that I love horses. I mean, I really love horses. It's one of the
How many hats does Jimmy have? Where does he generally like to buy it?
I generally buy them a place on the Strand in Venice Beach. It's called Titanic, and I pay cash. I demand a discount, and I probably got about 25 or 30 summer hats and probably another 25 or 30 felt winter hats. I probably got about 40 or 50 hats.
You have a lucky hat?
They're all lucky, Don. Every morning I wake up, they're all lucky.
Quiet crowd this evening.
Boy,
Yes,
Jimmy talking about Bobby Franklin. He come to Omaha, he shipped in Omaha for a state race, and Bobby was, like Jimmy said, you just kind of stayed away from him because, I mean, he'd cuss you and raise hell with you, and I'm not one to take that kind of stuff off anybody. And anyway, but he shipped in, and I'm going over about 100 miles into Iowa one day, and I'm going to look at some old horse-drawn buggies. I'm going to buy a couple of buggies off these people that sell these old antiques. And so I said to him, he was out at the barn, we were sitting on the rail, I said, Bobby, you want to go to Iowa with me? He said, what are you going over there for? I said, I'm over there looking for buggies, and you ain't got nothing to do, and we'll get over there and we'll have a steak at Ross's Steakhouse when we get back to Omaha. We ain't got nothing to do. So he went over there with me. We got to Iowa, we looked at the buggies, all the way back to Omaha. He shook his head. I can't believe you drove over there looking at them damn old buggies. I just can't believe it. We become good friends after that. And talking about Buster Milwick, he was the funniest little man that you ever seen. He had a dog named Buttermilk. And we were stabled right together, Buster and I and Proctor, all of us right there in the corner, and they'd end up in my tap room in the morning. But Buster, you know, he'd send for you, send somebody over. Come over, Buster wants to see you. Come to these tack rooms. That damn dog would let you walk in that door, never say a word, but he wouldn't let you leave. And then Buster would laugh like the devil. Him and I and John Sullivan used to go to church every Sunday morning together. That was back in the days where I was going to church. But I mean, it was Buster cussed like a sailor. So we'd walk out of church. Of course, the priest would be out there shaking everybody's hand, and Buster wouldn't get 3 steps away from him and start cussing. He don't know what he's talking about. He don't know. He always had a cigar he'd stick up his mouth. He don't know what he's talking about. Cussing, that poor old Sullivan, he'd want to run and hide.
That must be where Kathy Walsh got it from, because she worked for him for quite some time.
Absolutely.
Buster
Buster was like her uncle.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's exactly where Kathy got it from. You knew him too?
Well, yes, I rode for him. I didn't ride that many horses for him, but I just came to California, and I got to ride a horse for him called Airframe. Big horse, one of the biggest horses I ever rode. And he hasn't been winning. I remember that he had a chance, He finished third in the race, and I guess he bet on the horse. And he went to my agent and said, "Where do you find that jock in a Cracker Jack box?"
Oh my God! Well, I've got a quick story. If you're talking about old crusty people that no one really liked, it's a quick Bill Hartack story that I told before. I was riding down at the fairgrounds, and I was an apprentice riding down there, and Bill was one of the stewards, and he was good friends with Mike Stephen, who I rode for. And I never really got to meet him very much. I just knew he was a miserable old fart, and no one really liked him, and that was pretty much Bill Hartack. So I called in for movies one day. I don't know, cut someone off going into the far turn, so I get called in, and there's myself, and I think it was Calvin Burrell and Robbie Alvarado. They all call me in. And so we look at the tapes, and he's like, yeah, she did this, she did this, she did that. I'm like, all right, yeah, okay. So he's like, okay, you boys can go, and so you stay here. So I'm like, oh shit, I get days. You know, I'm going to get a fine, I'm going to get days. I definitely cut someone off, I know I did. So he goes, close the door. I'm like, all right. He goes, okay, so this is what you do. If you really want to F with these boys, do it at the 5/16 pole here and this pole here, because we can't see a damn thing. So it came out, Robin was waiting for me outside, and he's got days, didn't you? I'm like, no, but I got some really, really good advice. I think they've got better cameras up now. That was about 10 years ago.
I'll tell you one about Julie Crone. She rode for me when she first started out. We were at the Meadowlands one night. She's going down the backside. She rode the horse for me. And the jock, that was before they had the vest, and the jock whipped her over the back. And she come back and was crying. With step on the scale with her saddle, and I said, Julie, what's wrong? And she said, that jock hit me over the back 3 times down the backside. I said, well, goddamn candy ass, knock him on his butt. He stepped off that scale. When he stepped off, she hit him and floored him. To this day, if she walked in here tonight, she'd holler candy ass at me. She's never had no trouble after that.
So Lafitte, who was one of the toughest jocks you ever rode with?
Sandy Hawley.
God, there's so many of them, but you know, there's 2 jockeys that made me actually 3 jockeys that made me change my style of riding. One was Sandy Hawley, the other one was Angel Cordero, and the other one was Pat Valenzuela. They're those guys, you know, I had to completely, to beat them for a jockey standing, I had to completely change my style of riding. I had to concentrate on them and learn from them, because they were winning all the races. And I just couldn't, if I kept riding the way I was riding, I never was going to beat him. So with Sandy was he was a weird jockey though. He would not, for nothing he would go inside. He'd rather go 8 horses around than go in the inside. Believe me, and he was winning the races. So how can you beat a guy like that? You know? And the funny thing, and one of the things that I learned from him, that he would go straight. He would let his horse go as fast as he can in the backside, even if he had speed or no speed. And then when he got to that turn, he didn't go make the turn. He goes straight and then make a left-hand turn. And I'm telling you, but I started doing things like that, and it started working for me. And I started winning the races, you know. So I remember one time we were fighting for a leading rider at Hollywood Park, and he had an outside post. And he's like in the 8 hole, and I was like in the, no, he was like in the 10 holes, and I was like in the 7 hole, something like that. So I had speed, and the horse is outside, we all had speed. So we went to the turn, and I kept my horse in the middle of the turn. I didn't drop into side ground. And believe me, Sandy wind up 50 on the left side, 50. And we were all around the turn like that, right? So I ended up winning the race. And everybody was pissed with me. And then the steward called me, and I said, George, I kept straight lane. I didn't move. I just stay out. You know, they could step back and go inside. And they said, okay, but don't do it again.
You ever rode for Mr. Mark? Huh? You ever rode for Belly?
No, I don't think so.
He was mainly on the West Coast,
yeah.
And I was pretty much East Coast.
Yeah, we'd love to go.
I didn't do it, but I wasn't going to take any chances. You know?
Considering at one time you rode more winners than any race rider in history, it worked out pretty well.
I'm pretty sure.
Yes, sir.
How many races has Jack Vandenberg won?
Jack, how many races you won?
How many you won, Jack?
I won almost 6,500 since they kept track. I don't know how many I won before. They kept score, but since they kept track.
Did you ever ride? Were you a jockey at all? Not even on the bush tracks in Nebraska? Too big?
I galloped a lot of them.
Galloped a lot of them.
Yeah, and I'll tell you a little secret. He's as good a hand as ever put a leg over on one galloping too.
I've seen him
great
hop
ball that
on
morning. He was a little cautious of my thoughts that day. Like, he was a hell of a hand on a horse, galloping a horse. If you couldn't train one to the eye of the needle with him galloping, never would get him there, I can tell you that.
Bill, who's the favorite horse you trained? Just one of your personal favorites. Doesn't have to be the best horse you ever trained.
Gray Bar. That's his best one.
Well, I think I've been around so many nice horses, and I really do like them all, or most of them. I think there are some horses that you don't like as much, but some of the older, I remember going back a long time ago, some of the horses that I galloped and I groomed myself and I owned myself, and Jack and I actually owned a few horses together. We claimed a few, and I think some of them were actually some of the cheaper horses. I had an old horse called Ace Rula, I wound up racing till he was 13 years old. Wow. And I won the Daily Double at Hot Springs one time. This is that's the only exotic bet that they had. They had win, place, and show, and they had the Daily Double at Hot Springs. And I won the first half with a horse called Judy's Joker, and Ace Rula came through and won the second half. And it was like a $400 double, and we had a few dollars on it. But some of those horses, those are, that was at a time when winning the double made a big difference. and they were just real old, tough old horses. And I think Ace Rula had claimed him back like 3 different times. And so those old guys took care of me. And they were, they weren't stake horses, but they made a living for me and got me going.
And Jack, who's one of your favorite horses?
Ali Sheba.
I would have to say Gate Dancer, Ali Sheba. I trained a horse for Mr. Franks, and I won the Comp Fleet with him. They gave him to me when he was 8 and 9 years old, and I won the Comp Fleet both as an 8 and a 9-year-old called Dave's Friend. And I run him in the Comp Fleet as a 10-year-old. And with that little horse, he tried there wherever he took him. I've been to Phoenix with him, been to California, been back east with him and everything. And that horse he tried so hard. But those kind of horses, when I was just a kid, my dad put me in a truck with a horse called French Admiral. He bought him up in Detroit. He was a nasty, mean son of a gun. They put me up in a truck, and I had to ride from Detroit to Omaha, that back of that truck, because he wouldn't let you out the door because he savaged you. And I took care of that horse. Before I got done with him, I could brush him, feed him apples, oranges, bananas, and brush him and everything, and I set 2-track record with him in Exarban when I was 15 years old. I was rubbing him and taking him to the paddock, and you couldn't hit that horse. And I loved him. I mean, Tommy Osmond rode him, and he won them 3 races with him, 3 stake races, set 2-track records, and my dad shipped a horse into Omaha called Vantage. And he said, I want Tommy Osmond on him, and let Hank Manifold, he was an old rider, ride French Admiral. I said, Dad, this horse runs for Tommy. He knows how to handle him. He said, you put Tommy on Vantage and let Hank Manifold ride your horse. So, I mean, it was my dad's horse anyway, but they turned for home, and he goes wheeling by him, and about the time he got to the front, Manifold reached and hit him, and he put from first to damn near last in 10 jumps. I hated that jock from that day on. I never did get over that. But that was really a favorite horse because he was so mean and nasty when we got him.
I'm scanning the audience here to find more people. We'll get a question from you, but I think I see a Charlie Lepresti sitting over there in the corner. That's Charlie. Let's get Charlie up here and get a few words from Charlie. Come on, Charlie. Run out of whiskey next door? You gonna come out to the tent?
Well, he's doing pretty good. I'm broken hearted that he got beat, but he's doing pretty good.
He's not worried, is it?
I don't think he is, no.
Do you feel it was just a case of the surface last out?
You know,
You have no excuses. He got beat on the splat.
well, that horse is a good horse, though, Silvermax, and he's an improving horse, and any time he gets loose on the front end like that, he's going to win races, and I don't think our horse maybe handled the surface that well, but he got beat fair and square. I mean, he was supposed to win, and he didn't.
We've introduced everyone up here already. Give us a quick word on how you got into the business.
as a kid, you know, I was around show horses, and my uncle had carriage horses, and I really liked doing all that stuff, but I was always intrigued by the racetrack. And I met Joe Canny at Belmont Park, and he gave me a job. I was a hot walker, a groom, and that's how it started.
Did you change it for anything else? Do you ever want to be a jockey?
I'm kind of like Bill. I'm a little too big to ride. No, I don't think I'd change. I mean, I'm very lucky for the short amount of time that I've been in this game to have some horses like I've had. And Wise Dan, he's a pretty special horse, and I feel pretty fortunate to have him.
How's wintering every winter in Kentucky? Because you never leave. You just stay there all winter long. Where you know, Billy will go down south and work on his hat and everything.
I don't think he works on his tan. You know, I just like being at home in the winter. I really enjoy breaking babies and fooling with young horses. I mean, that's how I really got to train horses. That's the thing that I really like to do. So that's what I do at the farm in the winter. You know, we break a bunch of babies and give all the horses time off. And I've got some bird dogs. I'm going to tell a little bit of the truth now. I like to train my bird dogs, and I like to deer hunt and rope and do some things like that. So I take a little vacation in the winter. But we you know, bring our babies to the track and teach them about the track. And probably not the smartest place to stay in the winter time at Keeneland, but that's what we do. It works for Amy and I, and we just keep doing it.
All right, Charlie, the rest of us.
Thank you.
I think we're about done. One more question.
One more question. Hi, my name is Alison Booth. So when I got to Miami in 2002 after the Arlington Breeders' Cup training horses, I got to the gates to ride the most beautiful racetrack in the country. The sign was up and said, "Oh, for sale, it's done." I thought, oh no, it can't be happening. Twice in my life, somebody has to do something. So I thought I was that somebody. So I led a grassroots effort, and somebody at this table who I won't point out actually made me stand in my heels on concrete for almost 2 hours, debating whether or not they liked the person who owned the track. And they eventually agreed that it was the best racetrack to take the horses on. And even though it was impossible, it actually happened in the stage highly of racetrack. And now we are determined to save Hollywood Park Racetrack, and I believe we can do it. Yeah. And I just encourage everybody to sign the petition and join up and share with your friends. It's not just there's so many rumors going around, but there's a strategic plan and a business model in place that worked before, and we just need everybody to now just put your names down and you can do it.
All right, Allison. You can see Allison afterwards about saving Hollywood Park. Very good call from the right up and again to Jack's heart. Right, Jack?
What?
Saving Hollywood Park. You're leaving anyway. You're heading off to Oakland.
I don't care. There's other people go there. I love Hollywood Park. I think it's got the best stable area in the United States, bar anybody. It's got a good racetrack, and you know, they got 2,200 stalls in the best barns that you can go to. Some of these racetracks, if they ever catch fire, the thing will be gone before you blink your eyes. But Hollywood Park is always upgraded and everything, and they have to listen to all the other guys over across town, the big highfalutin guys, about how bad Hollywood is. And I love Hollywood Park, and it's my favorite track. I bar anybody. And it's the greatest sports complex there is if they do it the right way. Football team and everything. So if you sign for Allison, you sign that sheet, we might get it done. It ain't done. It ain't down yet, I can tell you that. So don't back off.
All right, guys, a big round for all of our panel, and thank you all. So much. We're going to have a little. We have a few more minutes where you can put in your raffle tickets into the silent auction, and then we're going to start the live auction. So I hope you all stick around. If you need a big number, please come to the table and get a big number. $50, $50, $50, $50.
Okay, what do we got here?
With this insert thing, and then
Here is whoa. Fred Stone Prince. Chris McCarran and Ron McIntyre. Fred Stone Print of John Henry right there. Alright, and I'll tell you a little secret. You ain't never bought a Fred Stone painting? Anything that has been worth more after you buy it.
100! 100!
That was all with high button shoes when you arrived. And 102, you mama, $200, mama, 3, you mama, 3, you mama, 3, now 203. 300, thank you, now 400. $300 150 now, $200 now, 150, Carl. 100. We're going the other way. I don't know what you did in school, but it's not very good. No, I got kicked out of school, but I can count. I got 150, I want 200 for you. 175. That went out with high butt shoes. 250. Ma'am, 250. 225.50. 225 now. 225. Cut out like it. 225. Y'all got 250. I sold it, this young lady right here, 225. That'll be the best bargain you ever bought in your life. 200, 250, 300, 300, 350, 350, 400, 400, 400, 400, make it easier like this, 450, 450, 500, $500, $500, you can buy 550, 550, $600, $600, thank you for trying, now help yourself. 600, 500, and you give up the $600, $600 now, $600, young fella. Are you going to let this lady outbid you? 500, you want to get out $500, it'll always be worth more, I'll guarantee you that. 550, 600, what do you say? Y'all done? Leaving the game right here. Fred Stone, Print, Martin Garcia, Martin Pedrosa, Garrett Goldberg, 250, 250 now, 300 now, 350 now, 350, $400 in the bone, 350 Young ladies, have you ever seen a Brinks truck in the funeral parade? You can't take it with you. 400. Thank you. 450. 450. $400 in the 50. 450 now. 450. Take it out, bring it out wine. You'll bid 450. 450 now. 450. Fred Stone leaving the game with all them jocks signing. 450. 450. 500. You lady, it means what you say. 500, sweetheart. 500? 475? Well, I'll be there. Jimmy, did you bid? You didn't bid, did you? 450, 75. 450, 75, 75. Now 450, 75. So, with that young man right there, $450. Thank you. He's been a good customer. Stand up here, you and your wife. The biggest supporter he ever was of taking care of the jockey from every one of these benefits that I've ever done across the country. From one end of the country to the other. Fred always has something donated.
For home race, that's one of the great spots around town. Obviously, George Wolf originated the place. And the last owner that owned the restaurant took an awful lot of the original artwork out of the restaurant, which really pissed a lot of us off. I just want to tell you, this is Dustin Nick Larson right here. He owns the restaurant, and he's buying a lot of this stuff to restore a lot of that stuff.
Thank you, Jimmy. Thank you, Dustin. I'll tell you what, he's really, every one of these times, Dustin did a good thing to restore this stuff.
All right.
300, 325, 350. You have to pay attention to the audience here. 350. You're thinking, that's dangerous. Be careful. 325, 350. 325, 50. Lucha Macho Man's holding. 325, 50. 75. 400. There's a halter in your closet. 400. If you hold your hand up, 375. 400. Otherwise, you're just going to have a ghost in the closet. 400. 375. You know what that'll be worth if he wins the classic? You'll double your money. 400. Thank you. 425. 450. You tried. I appreciate it. 425. 450. Oliver Costello. Frankie.
So we're so happy to be here at the Trott fundraiser supporting thoroughbreds off the racetrack.
That's right. And you, thank you for taking our picture because they're one of my greatest fans and friends. Thank you.